Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is chapter 12 of BNHA, second generation. This one is titled A Flamboyant Greeter. I think you all know who that is. Let's go meet him, Ginny squealed excitedly, grabbing both Soshi and Chisuki's arms and running towards the door, yanking them along behind her. Once inside, the three were led up to Condor's office and told to wait outside for a moment while the receptionist went in to make sure he was ready for them. Ginny was quivering where she stood, the amount of adrenaline in her system keeping her on the verge of having a heart attack as she clutched at her skirt and wrung her hands into it. Chisuki looked calm on the surface, but internally he was packing it, all nerve endings on edge as he waited in anticipation of meeting such a well-known and respected hero, while Soshi was staring blankly at the door, still not quite in the present as he tried to convince himself that he wasn't dreaming. "Condor will see you now," the receptionist explained as she exited the room and pushed the door open for the three teens to enter. Condor was sitting at his desk, his very large white wings tucked in behind him but still towering over his head as he smiled politely at the young interns. "Come in, take a seat," he said happily. "Don't be shy." Ginny's cheeks were starting to hurt already from the constant smiling, but she kept her face in a permanent grin as she walked over and took a seat in the middle of the three chairs that were spaced out before the desk, while the boys sat either side of her. "Now," Condor said, his gorgeous hazel eyes glossing over the three students as he looked at each person individually. "Would you like to know why I picked you three?" "Yes," Ginny blurted out. "Please, I know I didn't do well in the sports fair." Condor raised his hand to politely stop her and smiled, his bar piercing shifting in his eyebrow as his eyes crinkled a little bit. "Jinsei Kirishima, you have guts," he stated plainly. "You held on and refused to give up. I chose you not because of your winning or losing, but because of your heart." Ginny's eyes welled with tears as she placed her hands over her mouth and nose to stop herself from crying, but the tears still came. "Thank you," she whispered into her hand, feeling all so much better about herself since he praised her like that. "You're welcome," he said softly. "Well, I'm not here to compliment though. I'm giving an honest reason as to why I chose you all." "It's because this here king wants to raise up a strong army of smaller kings and queens," a very flamboyant voice stated from the doorway behind. "Bry?" Condor startled with surprise, his head snapping up to look at the new arrival as his eyes locked with his uncle's. "Nuggy honey," Bry replied brightly. "I couldn't help but drop by to say a big special hello to the newest heroes," the man named Bry stated. He stepped across the threshold and into the room with his handbag tucked under his arm as he sashayed over to the three very confused-looking students, stopping next to Chisuki first. "And a kiss for you," he said as he walked around in front of the blonde student and leaned down to press his cheek to Chisuki's, making an audible kiss noise with his puckered lips. Then he snapped back to upright with one hand up and fingers delicately close to his palm, then moved across to Jinsei. "And a kiss for you," he exclaimed as he bent down and repeated the same to her cheek, and then moved to Soshi. "And one last special kissy for you too, Beanie," he exclaimed exuberantly, bending smartly from the hips and giving Soshi the final kiss, the poor amber-eyed boy looking at him with much confusion. "Uncle Brian, please," Condor begged softly in an embarrassed voice. "I'm trying to initiate these new work experience students." "Consider them initiated then," Brian said proudly as he threw his hand up and popped a hip out, immediately regretting this move. "Oh, Beyonce," he hissed. "One of these days I'm gonna pull a damn hamstring trying to flaunt what my daddy gave me." Condor groaned softly as he covered his face with one hand. No sooner had he put his face in his hand than he looked up again, sensing that Kanaka had just arrived. "Can you please deal with Uncle Brian?" he asked Kana through his feather that he quickly plastered on him as the good-looking hero walked into the room. "Why?" Kanaka signed in confusion as he walked over to Brian, who had turned and squealed when he saw the hero, the pair greeting each other with a very elaborate-looking handshake, complete with moves from Single Ladies by Beyonce. "Oh, God." Condor groaned softly as the attention of the room shifted to Brian and Kana's flamboyant display of greeting. "Incredible," Brian signed to Kana, stroking down on an imaginary beard between thumb and finger, then pointing at Kana, the sign for incredible. "Thank you," Kana signed back with a bright smile, touching his fingertips to his chin and then pulling them out, the sign for thank you. "You call that dealing with Uncle Brian?" Condor deadpanned to Kana through the feather. "Jealous that I have a handshake with him?" Kana signed back cheekily. Get out, Condor jokingly replied, smirking as he said it to his friend. Anyway, as I was saying, he said out loud, clearing his throat to get everyone's attention again, I was letting you all know why I had chosen you. All three interns looked back around at Condor and settled in their seats again, while Brian and Kana watched on in the background. Soshi, Condor said as he looked at the white-haired boy, you had a bad match-up, but that didn't stop you from giving it your all. You're cunning, a quick thinker, and both qualities that I'd like to be able to nurture. Oh, look at my baby being a supportive role model, Brian gushed, waving his hand around to emphasize his words. Condor glanced at him and then turned to Chi. Now, Bakugou, he said, eyeing the young, upcoming hero. You are definitely like your father. Chi smirked proudly. You have his temper and desire to win with your quirk only. That's not true, Chi grunted with a scowl. My case in point, Condor mused. Anyhow, I want to show you that you can win without your quirk. Sometimes you won't be able to just blast your way through things or out of things. Chi crossed his arms across his chest defiantly, and his red eyes bore into Condor's, who remained calm in return. Oh, Beyonce, the energy in this room is exactly the same as how Miranda's flower shop used to be. We need to pray, Brian exclaimed loudly, breaking the tension between Chi and Condor. Uncle Bryce still got it. Stay tuned for chapter 13 coming tomorrow.